Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Rebuild with Confidence Divorce Summit. I'm your host, Lisa Grace, and I've been through it all myself. Looking back at my divorce, I remember feeling lost and unsure of what steps to take. It wasn't an easy journey, and there were times when I felt my emotions get the best of me, making things more difficult than they needed to be. But then, something happened that changed my perspective. A friend asked me a profound question. Who did I want to put through college? My daughter or the attorney's daughter? The question struck a chord with me and made me realize that there must be other options to consider in the divorce process than the standard adversarial approach. With that, I'm thrilled to have Karen Covy with us today. Karen is a divorce and decision coach, lawyer, mediator, speaker, and author. Karen is an expert in coaching busy professionals and business owners who find themselves in highly charged emotional situations. She helps her clients make clear, confident decisions and guides them to become the CEOs of their own divorce journey. With Karen's support, they can navigate the divorce process with less conflict, expense, and damage to themselves and their children. But that's not all. Karen is the author of the empowering book, When Happily Ever After Ends, How to Survive Your Divorce Emotionally, Financially, and Legally. She's also the creator of the highly acclaimed online divorce program, the Divorce Roadmap 2.0. And if that wasn't impressive enough, Karen is also the host of the popular podcast, Off the Fence. You can connect with Karen on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, as well as visit her website at karencovy.com for valuable resources and support. So get ready to gain valuable insights, practical advice, and inspiration. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa Grace.
So I'd like to start by asking you some questions.
Sure.
So what inspired you to write your book, When Happily Ever After Ends?
Well, the first edition of the book I wrote years and years ago. And at that time, I've always been on a mission to help people divorce more amicably and affordably. And I don't know about you, but when I'm faced with something that I don't understand, my first inclination is to go get a book about it, right? And the first edition of the book came out, I think it was 2006. So this was before the internet was in full swing. I mean, it was definitely there, but people would actually go to bookstores and look for books on subjects that they were interested in. And so I went to the bookstore and looked for books on divorce. And at that time, literally the only divorce books you could find were either stories about someone who had gotten divorced and their husband or wife did them wrong, and it was all the dirty tricks kind of books, or Divorce for Dummies. That was it. Divorce for Dummies was actually the best book on the topic, even though the title is a little bit, insulting. But so I said to myself, there's got to be a better way. There's so much more that people need to know. And if you know better, you're going to do better. So that's why I wrote that book.
And, it's interesting that you say that, because I had forgotten that I did go to Barnes and Nobles way back when they were open. And I went to the area where divorce books resided, and there were hardly any. But I did find a few books, and all that they did is create more fear, because, they are writing to how somebody did you wrong. And it's, I think in this day and age, and the goal of this summit and the goal of my life is to provide people hope and optimism during divorce. They don't have to do it as hard as it doesn't need to be so hard. So yes, thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, here's my premise is a mind that's clouded by fear has no room for the clarity it takes to make good decisions. And when someone is going through a divorce, they are going to be faced with making more important life decisions in a relatively short period of time than they will at any other similar time in their life. You have got to be able to think clearly, and you can't do that when you're scared out of your mind. You just can't.
Exactly. It's analysis paralysis. It's just everything is, it comes to a halt pretty much. In your book, you talk about the law of responsibility, the law of control, and the law of karma. And I found that those are very interesting topics. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, these are what I call universal laws, and I didn't create them. I didn't come up with them. They just are. And they're not unique to divorce. They apply to everything in life. But what I did was I took those laws that exist and applied it to divorce because they do apply. First, the law of responsibility. I know people don't like to hear this, but you are responsible for your own life. And I don't care if you have the best divorce lawyer on the planet, there is nobody that's going to care more about your divorce and your life than you do. So you're responsible for making decisions. You're responsible for taking control. You're responsible for becoming, as I like to say, the CEO of your own divorce, because that puts you in charge of your life. And that relates also to the second law, which is control. The only person you can control is yourself. And everybody wants to try to control their spouse, right? Well, if you could have done that, you wouldn't be getting divorced because it would have worked when you were married. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. The only place that you have control is over yourself. And that gives you tremendous power once you realize it. Once you realize that you can control your own emotions, you can control your own destiny, your fate, the way your divorce goes. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be in 100% control of everything. Obviously, your spouse is involved as well. But if you control your side of the street, you are more than halfway home. And finally, it's the law of karma. And quite frankly, karma means what goes around comes around. And so many people look at divorce in isolation. It's I want to get my spouse. I want to make him or her suffer. I want to, I don't deserve this. I'm going to make them suffer, right? And the problem with that is that it always makes you suffer. Whatever you do in your divorce, going through a divorce doesn't give you license to go crazy and do things that are different from who you are and who you want to be as a human being. So I know people don't like to think of the golden rule as applying in a divorce, but it does. And remember, at the end of your divorce, at the end of the day, you've got to look yourself in the mirror. You're not going to be looking at your spouse anymore. You're going to be looking at yourself. Who do you want to be? How do you want to live? And are you going to be able to look yourself in the mirror, in the eye, and say, you know what? This was a lousy period in my life, but I'm proud of the way that I went through it.
I love that. And I think that leads really nicely into the, well, I'm going to skip a question. You had said that, here we go. You mentioned that divorce is a change in status, not, in the relationship. Will you, and especially when you have children, can you explain what you meant by that?
Look, you can divorce a spouse, but parents are parents forever. So what divorce is going to do, it's going to change your relationship with the person who used to be your spouse. Now you're going to be co-parents, but you're still going to be in relationship. So you can either use the time during divorce to figure out how are you going to reconfigure that relationship? How are you going to navigate it? How are you going to learn to communicate so that your kids don't suffer long term? Because I don't know about you, but I know people who got divorced 20 years ago. Their kids, their kid is getting married, and they, the kid is terrified at the wedding ceremony. They have to sit the parents in two different sides of the room because they're afraid the parents are going to have a fight in the middle of the wedding ceremony. Nobody wants to do that to their children, and no child wants to have to deal with that kind of drama decades after a divorce, right? So you need to rethink what you want for your relationship and create something. You don't have to be besties, but you just have to be able to get along for the sake of the kids.
I remember at some point in my divorce process, I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be a victim, and that I could choose to move forward with grace and freedom, or I could choose to go forward with a ball and chain around my heart for the rest of my life. And I didn't want to do that. So I had pretty much enough of that bad marriage. So why would I want to have a bad marriage the rest of my life? And so the law of responsibility, going back to that, choosing, it's all a choice in how we want to move forward. And you described that and explained that very well. And that's the thing about you, is not only are you a lawyer, you're also a divorce coach. And I didn't put this in there, but there's the business of divorce and the emotion of divorce. And you cover both sides, which is so wonderful. So it's like one-stop shopping with you.
That's true. But you know what you said was just so powerful. And I hope people hear that. You chose not to become a victim, not to remain a victim. And the truth is, there is no power in victimhood. It feels good in the moment because you feel justified, and you probably are, but that's not the point. As long as you remain a victim, you don't have control over your life. You can't move forward. You can't be free. You can't be loving in another relationship because you've got, as you said, that ball and chain around your heart. So that choice is so important. It was beautiful that you made it, and I hope other people hear that.
And I was able to be at my daughter's wedding and sit next to my ex-husband, and we share grandchildren. It's like it doesn't end. The relationship doesn't end. It just changes, especially when you have children. So my next question, and when I got divorced, when I started the divorce process, I only thought there was one way you do divorce, and you find an attorney, and you go in there and you write them a retainer, and then you sit back and you have no idea what's going on. So do you always need to hire an attorney?
No, you don't always need to hire an attorney, but you always need legal advice. So here's the difference, and here's what I mean.
Okay.
The more you have at stake, the more you're going to need an attorney. But people turn their lives over to the attorney. You don't have to do that. If you can remember that this is your life and you are in control, and you keep that control, you can decide, first of all, what kind of attorney you're going to hire, because there's a vast difference in different attorneys, and B, what you're going to direct that attorney to do or not do, right? You can say to the lawyer, okay, go fight it out, get me everything that you can get me, which the lawyer is going to interpret in terms of money, right? So they're going to fight for the most money, which is going to cost you a lot of money, and more importantly, cost you a lot of pain, right? So you want to keep control over the lawyer. Now, even if you've had a short marriage, no kids, nothing in common, you still need legal advice, even if it's just to confirm that you're doing the right thing and going in the right direction. And these days, you can use lawyers in ways that didn't exist before. You can use lawyers to simply draft your documents. So if you and your spouse come up with an agreement, you can hand the agreement to your lawyer and say, can you make this into legal paperwork, and just run it through the court system? And there are lawyers that can do that. They don't have to start from the beginning, file papers, serve your spouse, start a big fight, make a big mess, and end 2 years later after you've paid them tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes, thank you. Crazy. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And again, who do you want to put through college, your child or the legal system's children? So who are the decision makers in divorce? Now you kind of are touching on that. And I love, the part where, everyone thinks that the judge is going to be fair. So I'm going to let you take that at that point.
Fair, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder, right? So here's the problem with fair. What you think is fair is going to be very different than what your spouse thinks is fair, and probably different than what the judge thinks is fair. So again, by keeping control of your process and making your decisions yourself, you get to decide what's fair. You get to decide how this is going to go and what you're going to get and how things are going to go after your divorce, how you're going to co-parent. All of that can be in your own control, or you can give up control. You give up control of your life when you go give it to the judge and say, here, decide this for me. That is not what you want. So there is a difference between who is in control or who should be in control of the decisions in your divorce. The answer is you and your spouse. But who can be in control if you guys can't make those decisions? That's going to be a judge, or maybe a mediator. A mediator isn't going to decide anything, but they can help you and your spouse make the decisions so they can empower you to keep that control. But if you don't do that, then it's going to be the lawyers and the judges who decide how you're going to live your life from that point forward. That's not a place that most people want to be.
How many how many people actually sit in front of a judge and have, the decisions of their life made for them?
It depends on what you mean. All right, in terms of going all the way to trial, it's hard to get exact statistics, but by everybody's best guess, 90 to 95% of cases are going to settle before trial. Period, full stop. So a very small number of people are actually going to have the judge decide their divorce. However, there's a lot of steps that lead up to that final trial. There are individual hearings. For example, you might have a hearing about who gets temporary custody of your child. You may have a hearing about who pays or receives temporary child support or temporary spousal support. All those things can be decided by a judge, or you can make all those decisions along the way. And really, that's your choice.
And save hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think the fight is over money a lot of the times, and then the fight costs you money. It's like a vicious circle, a catch-22. It's no. My ex-husband and I went through mediation, and I think back when, I think our divorce, the actual divorce cost $1,300.
That's amazing.
Because we agreed on everything.
Yep. And what is so important for people to hear is that that's possible for them. You can go to a mediator. Even if you can't talk to your spouse directly, if you're always in a fight, that's okay. That doesn't mean mediation won't work. It just means you need a skilled mediator who can help each one of you hear each other and speak up and not, become a doormat and just go, and become the shrinking violet, but to actually say what you think. Your spouse says what he or she thinks, and you work it out. It is entirely possible. And I have been part of, personally, cases where the size of the marital estate was millions of dollars, and they worked it out and stayed out of court, and their divorce expenses were minimal, right? And you're a testimony to that you can do it for $1,300 or $1,500 or something. But the bottom line is you can do it very inexpensively, but you have to be willing to work at it. You had to show up for mediation. You had to be prepared for mediation, and you had to be in control of your own emotions so that you didn't just end up in a big fight in the middle of mediation, storm out, and end up in a courtroom.
Yes, it can be done. It wasn't easy. I was like the duck that was like this, but my feet were like this. So, it might sound, oh yeah, well, she did that, but it was, it's not, I'm not making it light. It was a hard time. So, ADR, alternative dispute resolution. Can you, because there's, collaborative divorce, and can you explain a few of those terms that, I didn't even know existed until I entered the divorce process?
Yeah. So ADR stands for alternative dispute resolution. You have to understand that the default way to get a divorce is through the court system, through litigation, right? So anything that's not litigation is called alternative. There are those of us in the ADR community that think it should be the other way around, but that's a different discussion. So what's an alternative to going to court and fighting? Well, first of all, mediation. And mediation is where you've got an independent trained mediator who's a neutral, doesn't represent either one of you, who is there to facilitate a conversation and help you and your spouse work things out so you settle your case. That's mediation. Collaborative divorce, something entirely different. It's a separate process. Collaborative divorce uses a team approach, right? And the most important thing to remember is that in order to use this approach, you've got to get professionals who are actually trained in collaborative divorce, because it's a different process where you both focus on, you and your spouse and the professionals focus on what each of you needs and what each of you is concerned about, and you try to craft an agreement that works for everybody. Part of that agreement is going to, or part of that team that's going to be helping you do that are the lawyers. There's going to be a divorce coach, maybe one, maybe two, depending on your process, but they're going to help you manage your emotions so that when you're negotiating, you're not screaming at each other, you're actually talking and hearing each other. And there's going to be a neutral financial professional who is going to sit down and say, okay, here's all of the financial information. Here are your reports. If you divide things up this way, it looks like this. If you divide things up that way, it looks like that. And they can help you without skewing the numbers to favor one side or the other, because so many times in a litigated divorce, each lawyer makes their own reports, and of course they're skewing them so that they favor their client the most. The neutral financial mediator or financial professional doesn't do that. Now, the biggest difference between collaborative is everybody, you, your spouse, and all the professionals sign an agreement that says, we're going to stay out of court. And if for whatever reason you don't stay out of court, and you end up back in the court system, all of the professionals withdraw and say, you have to find new lawyers, new financial people, new coaches, if you're going to use coaches, right? And the reason for that is because it gets everybody rowing on the boat in the same direction. Because if you think about a regular divorce, a litigated divorce, the lawyer makes money when you fight. So the lawyer has an incentive to fuel the fight, not stop it. In collaborative, the lawyer knows if they fuel the fight and you go to court, they lose the money, they lose the client, they lose your business. So they're trying to help you resolve your issues. You're trying to help you resolve your issues. Everybody's, aligned to do the same thing. And therefore, it increases the chances that you're actually going to accomplish your objective.
Collaborative divorce attorneys, are they different than a regular divorce attorney?
Yes, they are specifically trained in the process, in how to represent their client, because they're not like throwing you under the bus by any means. They're still helping you stand up for yourself to get the best settlement in accordance with what you want, right? They're still there talking to you, protecting you, advising you about the law, but they're not fueling the fight. Well, to have that skill set is different than the skill set that most lawyers are taught in law school, which is go to court, fight, learn how to try a case, learn how to argue zealously to protect your client. Different skill set, and that skill set tends to ramp up the conflict. So you really need a lawyer who's trained in this process, and lawyers who are not trained in the process typically are not going to sign that. They call it a participation agreement, that if you sign that and then it says, if the case, ends up in court, you withdraw. Most lawyers who are not collaboratively trained will not sign that agreement. Why? Because they don't want to lose your business. And what that tells you as a client, if you have a lawyer who won't sign that, they're not really a collaborative lawyer. Period, full stop.
Thank you, Karen. I had no idea, truly, what collaborative divorce was all about. And it sounds like a wonderful option where people are committed to still doing life well and not out to go for the jugular. And, that's a really good option. Awesome. So if you could give one piece of advice to someone contemplating or going through a divorce, what would it be?
Be prepared. This is your life. The more you know, the better you're likely to do. And it's not enough to just get a lawyer and hand your life over to that person. You need, whether you're going through a collaborative divorce or not, You need a team, but you can put together your own team. Maybe it's friends and family who are there to support you. Maybe it's a financial advisor who can help you figure out your numbers. It's definitely going to be a lawyer. It's probably going to be a coach to help fill in the gaps, help you talk to your lawyer, work with your lawyer, and get you prepared for what's coming. Because going through a divorce is like going through anything else in life. The more prepared you are, the better you're likely to do.
Now, you're a divorce coach, and I think that people don't really, this is an ad lib question. People don't really know that that profession exists, but it's recognized by the American Bar Association as a profession that supports the divorce process. Can you explain what a divorce coach is?
A divorce coach is someone who fills in the gaps that your lawyer will leave. I do the things people expect their lawyer to do that their lawyer doesn't do. For example, I will educate you about the divorce process. I will let you know what your choices are as you go along the way, because if you don't know you have a choice, you can't make one. I help people work with first of all, find the divorce lawyer that's going to be appropriate for them, and then work with that lawyer, because I speak lawyer and I speak human. And that's something that most lawyers have forgotten how to do, right? So I can explain to you how the divorce process works so that you can use the process instead of being used by the process, right? I help people prepare for hearings, prepare for mediation, prepare for trial, prepare for custody evaluations, and do all of the things. Can a lawyer do that? Yes. Do you really want to pay a lawyer $500 to $700 an hour to do that? Probably not. Is that what the lawyer is best at doing? Probably not. So that's the gap that I fill, and I help people. That's why I say to people, I help you become the CEO of your own divorce. And I understand that's probably not a job you ever wanted to have. But if you find yourself in the position where you're getting a divorce, it's the best job that you can do to make sure that your divorce is a blip in the radar screen of your life, and you go on to be happy afterwards, instead of becoming one of those people who is either locked in victimhood or so bitter and angry about what happened in their divorce that they live the rest of their life in that bitterness and anger. That's not a way to live.
And a coach helps with the emotion and all of that. So
of course,
that's amazing, Karen. It's truly amazing. So this has been such good information. And you are offering a free gift to our audience, a divorce toolkit. Can you provide a little overview of that?
Yeah, sure. This is tools. They're tools that your lawyer is probably never going to give to you, but that are so helpful in preparing for your divorce. So there's a divorce checklist, a divorce document checklist, but there's also a divorce issues checklist, which is what are the issues you're likely to face or could face in your divorce, and how do you get ready for them? Because if you know something's coming, you can prepare yourself. If you never saw it coming, that's when you get blindsided, right? So there's an issues checklist. There's an article on how to tell your spouse you want a divorce, because how you start ends up affecting how you go through it and how you finish. So the way you start matters. So it's got, checklists, worksheets, all kinds of things for people so that they can start on the right foot.
Thank you. And that can be downloaded. We're going to include the link under this video, but it can be downloaded at karencovy.com. Rebuild with confidence. Thank you. I'm so excited. But again, everyone can go to your website, karencovy.com, and find you. Book a strategy call if they want more information.
Sure. Just reach out. There's a contact form on the website. It says connect with Karen. Fill out the form, send it in, and we will get everything, set up for you.
I love it. Karen, again, thank you so much for your time today. I feel so honored and blessed to have you. And I know that the audience that comes to this summit is going to be blessed by you. Just the knowledge. We don't know what we don't know. And that's the goal of this summit, is to provide hope and optimism and knowledge and comfort that there are people out there that are willing and able to provide them support. So again, thank you. And thank you to the audience for coming and listening. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining the Rebuild with Confidence Divorce Summit. I appreciate your participation, and I'm proud of you for leaning in to your healing journey. If you're ready to take the next step towards rebuilding with confidence, book a discovery call with me at secondactcoaching.com. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and resources to help you start the rebuilding process and create a life you are excited about. Remember, you are not alone. We're here to support you every step of the way. Take care, my friend, and remember, there's always hope for a brighter future, and the best is yet to come.